Do you want me to click it? Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where in the world you are located. Happy February. We've made it through January, which I know sometimes is the longest month of the year. So we made it. Now we're in February. Today's session is all about what parenting decisions actually matter in divorce. So Cristin Terri is leading this session. She is our divorce coach, also our co-parenting specialist. So if you have any questions regarding divorce, parenting, co-parenting, parenting plans, this is the time to ask your questions. We also have Melissa Gregg with us, who is our financial mediator, divorce strategist, and literally all things divorce, and myself, who I help our members in the post-divorce phase. So again, this is your 90 minutes. Any questions, concerns, if you want to celebrate any wins this week or talk through any challenges, now is your time. We always like to start with a quick meditation to ground us. So Cristin, take it away.
Thank you so much and welcome to everyone. Before we start, I'm always going to ask you, let's get into a nice, comfortable position, making sure that your spine is nice and straight and maybe your feet grounded. Drop those shoulders and maybe rest your hands gently in your lap. I think Anna's going to get some background music going for us so that before we start. And whenever you're ready, you can gently close your eyes. We're going to begin by taking a slow breath in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And again, deep breath in through the nose, feeling yourself expand, and exhale. Just bringing our awareness to this moment. And again, deep breath in through the nose and exhale. We're now going to allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm. And just gently bring your awareness to the sensation of your breath. Without trying to control it, just gently observe how the air fills your body. Maybe you feel a cool breeze as you blow out. As we bring this awareness to our breath, I want you to shift and notice what's going on in your thoughts. What's going on in your mind currently? There's a beautiful visual to observe your thoughts as if they were just a cloud passing. And recognize there is nothing to fix or to stop. Just simply observing the clouds. Each thought. No need to pass judgment. No need to hold on. Just let it pass. Each time you notice your mind wandering, just gently return to your breath. This is the practice. The awareness of a wandering mind and bringing it back to where we want our focus. For now, we're allowing our breath to be that anchor. Now I want you to imagine you're standing beside a calm body of water, a lake or a quiet pool. And imagine the surface of the water represents your mind. First, may feel repetitive or busy. With every exhale, imagine every exhale. Imagine your body is getting breath by breath. The surface settles. You're not forcing it, you're allowing it. Now notice how your body feels when you stop chasing those thoughts and simply observe and allow the stillness. Now I want you to take one more slow, steady breath in and a long breath out. Maybe you release a sigh as we start welcoming some movement back. You gently shrug your shoulders, bringing your awareness back to the room around you. Wiggle your fingers and toes if that feels good. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Sorry about the tech issues there, as life is. I remember when I started meditating, getting annoyed by little things like that. And then I learned that that's just part of life. And that practice itself, I would get annoyed by a dog barking because I'm like, that's not part of the meditation. And yeah, I eventually learned that no, just accept the dog barking as part of this meditation. And my meditation started getting a lot better when I stopped trying to control everything on the outside.
Yeah, my mom's she just got her yoga certification. So when I was home for the holidays, she was doing some like visualizations with me. And my dad has a particular power of knowing the exact moment when we are wanting to be, the rest of the house is wanting to be calm. Like he was outside the whole day. The second that meditation and visualization started, he came inside and we were in the basement. So all the footsteps were like, toot, toot, back and forth, back and forth. And I was about to lose my mind on him. And then that was a healthy reminder. This means you need this meditation more than ever. If you are going to lose your patience that easily, maybe you aren't as regulated as you think you are. Oh, it's just, yeah. Anyways, do we want to talk about what's going on in our world right now? Or we wanting to talk about February intentions? I don't know. Do we want to be fun or work today?
Both.
Both? Okay. Melissa, you go. You start then.
I think what's been happening for me personally, about divorce and, I pay attention to a lot of our socials. So it's more like what has been going on with everyone
Mhm.
is a misunderstanding of that they can control this process. Not realizing that they can pivot and make some changes with their team, like with their attorney. They may have hired people when they were at a different phase of their confidence level. And sometimes as they progress in this delay, distract, not getting documents, they get pretty frustrated. And that gives them more confidence to do something different. So I've been more explaining to people that even if you don't have an attorney, even if you are not represented, that mediation could be a way that you can level the playing field. You know, like court and trial is where you're not going to have the best chance against other attorneys, but in mediation, that's where it kind of levels and you're communicating with the mediator. And we were talking about like doing some mock mediations, and I think that that would be good, but we also understand that you're typically not in the same room in a mediation. And so you can really be in your own room, be presenting, you know, to the mediator if you're prepared and have everything together. So I think it's more been empowering people to say, you know what, if it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. And it's okay to make a change. It's okay to do something different. But the moment that you do some things different, your attorney could fire you as well. You know, and that's okay. You know, like all of this process, you have to sort of start to break your brain. If it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't feel aligned, it may be that there's other opportunities for you to do things different. And I think I'll talk, you know, after we get started about some of the ways to get documents, to get money. You know, if you're really in that stage where they're using the kids against you, they're using money against you. Those are the two big levers that they pull. But for the most part, a lot of strategy sessions, a lot of people getting their own ducks in a row, doing the spreadsheets, you know, putting together position statements. So it's been really nice to see that people are responding to, you know, some of the things that we've been saying to do, and it is moving the needle. So I've been pretty happy with everybody on social, like posting like this worked. Like, I can't believe it. You know, it's like these tactics are not really super crazy or hard, but they work because it's just methodical. It's the same pattern around the country, around the world. These are negotiation things. These are not divorce specific things. This is psychology, you know, like how do you get somebody like, and Kristen's going to talk a lot about the kids, like how do you get your kids to do stuff? It's some of the same process. Like, how do you give a toxic person, a toddler, to do something? Like, you got to be a little bit more creative. So it's been fun watching everybody kind of open up and take control of their situation.
Yeah, I think just on kind of the topic of content, because then my world is the content creation, not necessarily how people are interacting in the divorce world. But, you know, this week with myself, I there are some days that I just am so good about recording content. And then there are the next days and I'm like, if I don't have to see my phone the whole day, I'm in paradise, right? Like it's such a balance of, but then like we see Melissa, she's posting out like 3, 4, 5 times a day on multiple different platforms. She is someone who is so methodical doing that. But then I think she also works it a lot into her schedule, or she has 10 minutes between meetings and she's doing that instead of someone like me who's checking Instagram for like personal reasons, right? Instead of recording videos. But I think like this is what I'm trying to do to get myself then when if I have a 10-minute gap, I'm trying to, this might sound crazy, but I'm getting like 2 of everything. So I have a tripod, I have a ring light, and I have microphones. I'm trying to get 2 of all of those things. So then I always have a setup. Because right now, for example, my microphones are at my co-working space. I forgot them over the weekend. So I like to have my microphones for video. Doesn't mean I need them. But if I have 2 of everything, then there's no excuse for me not to do it, right? So everything's in my Amazon cart right now. I'm going to finalize that purchase today just because we're humans. We make excuses. Well, the ring light wasn't with me. The lighting was, it's like, no, stop making excuses. Just have a setup. Like I have a little corner here that I want all my equipment in. I have a little basket, and that's just, I have my home studio and then I have my on the go studio. So I don't know. I know a lot of us here aren't necessarily in the content recording phase, but when you get there, which will be soon, I think that this is a good tip to just kind of duplicate things.
Well, it's funny because I had a tripod break over the weekend.
Mhm.
Like one of my kids was like messing with it, and I was like, damn it. You know, so I had to go get another one. And the same concept, you know, but batch create it, or
Yeah.
I like to create it when my hair looks great and I have
Mhm.
makeup on. I'm like, let's shoot a whole bunch of videos and then kind of keep it in the hopper. But the other thing that I think that stops people from moving forward is they don't have a following or who's going to be watching it. And I think what we've been learning is just grow a really attentive, like what if you had 1,000 people that really loved your stuff and you just made crocheted animals, or you made, something very simple, and 1,000 people of that, if 100 people buy from you, which is the 10% kind of conversion, and you're making $20 off of each of those things, like that's $2,200 that could be immediate. And so it's not about viral anymore. It's about cultivating a community that loves who you are, loves what you do, and then creating stuff for them. So if somebody asks you 10 questions about your crochet animals, like just shoot videos about what happened that day. Like, what did somebody ask you that was super simple that you're repeating over and over to, your fans or whatever? I think that it can be a lot more simple than we're making it, and authentic is going to go a lot further than contrived, or like, what should I, like AI, tell me what I should talk about. Your people will tell you what you talk about, right? So great tip. What's going on with you, Cristin?
So fairly similar, kind of on a context of what you'd mentioned, Melissa, is I have in general been working with clients directly to do their parenting plan. More often than not, they're not happy with the template that comes from their attorney. They feel like there's more, their situation's more complex. And the role started shifting this week, where I had an attorney approach me and just say they don't have the capacity and the bandwidth for the back and forth of logistics. Could we work out a referral system? So even the attorneys are saying they're not going to help you develop a parenting plan that is working specifically for your family. That is not their expertise. And this specific attorney, she said to me, she's like, I don't have the capacity. I'm running 10, 20 divorce cases every 2-3 months, cycling or however long it is. But she's like, I need someone like you that I can refer my clients to. They come back and I will review and make sure it's legally sound. But so even the attorneys are saying we need to be using experts. I actually shared a video recently on social media of an attorney in the sorry, I think I got cut out there, of an attorney in the US also stating that it's a way more effective way to get the financial expert to do the finances, to get a parenting expert to do the parenting plan, and let the legal expert execute the legal framework and make sure that your rights are being protected. Which brings us to today. So today, we're going to be discussing what parenting decisions actually matter in divorce. And let me open up my slides here. We've got some slides. So the parenting plan decisions that actually matter. Last week we had, let me just go back so I don't distract. Last week we discussed more stabilizing and the nervous system, because if our nervous system is shot, we cannot make clear decisions. Our logical brain is not functioning. Whereas this week, we're hoping that the nervous system is slightly more regulated, and that meditation helped as well. But now we're going to go into stabilizing and into alignment. Sorry, last week was stabilizing. This week is alignment. And the parenting plan questions that most parents never ask or never think to ask. What I see in general, it's not that parents don't care. They care the most about their kids, but it's because you don't know what you don't know, right? If you've never co-parented before, how could you possibly know what to expect or what to consider? And this is where I'm going to get into. I've recently developed, or a little while back developed, the Untangled Parenting Plan System. And it covers, just one part of it covers 150 questions. Now that might sound like a lot, 150 questions for a parenting plan, compared to a template that your attorney is going to give you, which is very standard. But what I want to pose to anyone watching is, have you asked yourself 150 questions about what will protect your kids through this? Now, I didn't know these questions. I just went with what the attorney provided. And I developed the system because I wish these questions were asked. I wish I had the foresight and the insight to prevent all the issues that came from a very basic parenting plan. I think I've skipped 2 here. Sorry. So the most detailed parenting plan, we've discussed this in the past, is if you and your ex-spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse walk into a mediation room or walk into court, and your spouse has a very vague basic parenting plan. You come with a detailed parenting plan. Your parenting plan is going to end up being the discussion point because you have more detail. The other one is missing a lot of concepts or a lot of points that you may not have thought of. So 50-50, the original conversation that I like to have when I'm speaking to my clients is we're not going to shape a parenting plan based on 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, because that's not a plan. That is a ratio. And the best parenting plans aren't necessarily decided in a ratio format. It is decided on who decides the medical. If there's a medical emergency, who decides that? What happens if you disagree? What happens if you disagree on anything going forward in your co-parenting journey? What time are handovers? I have seen so many parenting plans that say, okay, Monday to Friday, mom, Saturday to Tuesday, dad, and it splits the schedule, but there's no time, there's no location. So then when the first parent's late or there's no time, you've got to have more communication, and that's fighting back and forth. So setting times, of course, those can change over your child's schedule, but we need to have times for handovers with our parents. What happens if a parent's late? What happens during school holidays? What about new partners? What about social media for your teenagers? Have you decided whether photos are allowed to be posted online about your kids? Is that going to bother you down the line? Do you want something what if photos are being used on dating profiles? I've had that scenario with co-parenting relationship. The kids have been posted on dating apps, and there was no regulation in the parenting plan. There was nothing that the mom could do because it wasn't discussed prior to setting up the parenting plan. Now, in order to get your parenting plan, my 5 decision categories. So every real parenting plan has these 5 categories, and this is how I kind of organize. Otherwise, my clients end up drowning in the details. So your first category is going to be parenting time and transitions. Now, this is not just the schedule or the handovers. This is the routines or the predictability. I want you to ask yourself, are transitions at home or a neutral location if there's high conflict? Because if you're transitioning your kids at someone's house and you've got a hostile co-parenting relationship, now this parent must come to your home, your safe space, and it's conflict around the home. So where are your transitions happening? What time are they happening? What is your current co-parenting reality? What is your ideal co-parenting reality going forward? Is there high conflict? Are you amicable? Is there long distance? Category 2 is going to be decision making and your authority. So that's not just your medical, your education, and your extracurriculars and what joint decisions actually matter, but what happens if you disagree? Who breaks that tie? So your child wants to get braces. Dad says no, mom says yes. What's the process after that? If you disagree, you need in your parenting plan, when we disagree, X, Y, Z will happen. Could it be that the dentist is going to be the tiebreaker the orthodontist is going to be the tiebreaker? Maybe it's another surgery, or maybe it's an extracurricular or a school recommendation for extra counseling. Who gets the decision-making authority? Is there one parent that maybe has the medical veto power, or one parent that makes the educational decisions as a tiebreaker? Or do you use the principal and the teacher? Category 3 is your communication and boundaries. So how you communicate, how often you communicate, and how are you going to reduce emotional reactivity? Because divorce is very emotional. So are you going to be using a co-parenting app? Are you going to be using email only? A lot of times I don't see what is the response window. And I think we vaguely mentioned this last week, Melissa, is okay, if I send you an email, our daughter needs to go for a minor medical procedure or a medical thing. If you don't respond in 48 hours, then I'm going to assume it's right. Or we need responses back within 48 hours if it's a non-emergency. So what is the response window from your co-parent? I see this in any of my parenting coordination clients where I'm supporting them through their co-parenting, that these little response windows and what your communication expectations are going forward are completely left out. And that is where the biggest breakdowns happen. Usually finances and communication and new partners are the 3 areas where your parenting plan or co-parenting relationships take a lot of strain. Category 4 is your financial and practical responsibilities. So what costs are involved, reimbursements, extras, what happens when finances shift if someone loses their job or gets retrenched or something happens, and how do you decide what's reasonable for extracurriculars? So there's a lot of questions that we need to be considering going forward. Category 5, the last category, is your conflict resolution and your future changes. So this is the backbone of a good parenting plan, in my opinion. And a good conflict resolution process in your parenting plan, if it's not there, your plan is going to break and you're going to just end up back in court more often than you want to. So what is the step-by-step escalation path if there's a disagreement? So parent A, parent B disagree. What do we do next? Do we run straight to our attorneys? Do we find a third-party expert? Do we have a parenting coordinator on file or a mediator on file that we use? What is the process? What steps are you going to take to resolve any conflict going forward? So if your plan doesn't tell you what...
And I want to mention something. We had a judge mediator that, we were mediating a parenting plan. We had come up with some differences. The client had actually used like ChatGPT, and this is for anything, not just a parenting plan, but anything, any agreement that you're coming to in a mediation. The judge mediator said something that I think was very impactful, is how enforceable are the agreements? So if you want to create a parenting plan or a final settlement offer agreement, how enforceable? Because again, a potentially toxic person can sign the agreement and then just ignore it. And now what do you have to do? So do you have to go back into mediation, or should you go back in and say, okay, how do we make this agreement more enforceable? And I'll give you one example. Like if you guys have to agree to a decision. So, Johnny wants to play hockey and it's expensive and you guys have agreed to split the costs in some capacity, but, we have to say, hey, Johnny wants to play hockey. One way to have it be more enforceable is to have the assumption of approval. And the assumption of approval means if I say, hey, Johnny wants to play hockey and we're going to sign him up and the estimated costs are $1,000 and you're submitting it through, text or email or the court, approved, like you might still continue to use like Our Family Wizard or something to communicate, right? If there's no response, and you can build this into your agreement, if there's no response in 48 hours, the assumption is approval. So a lot of times we put the agreement like, well, respond in 48 hours, or it's not, I don't know if you're approving it, right? No, have the assumption that if they lack the response, because they're more likely to lack a response, then within that 48 hours, okay, you had no issues with it, we move forward. And if that's part of the agreement, that is automatically enforceable because the agreement said respond in 48 hours and you didn't respond. And that's just one way that I think that you can get into a better space, because you don't want to be mothering the ex-parent. You don't want to be, now you have to send them 5 texts or 5 emails of, okay, are you approving Johnny's hockey yet? Are you approving Johnny? Oh, well, I'll talk to Johnny when he comes. Well, no, like the time frame could have already passed. So I think it's really thinking of, like, you cannot enforce things in the other person's household. That is very difficult. But how do you put other rubrics in place that allow the agreement to be auto checking itself in some capacity? So, or, you keep a credit card that's used for Johnny's expenses. And so it's very transparent. Both of you are on that credit card. Each of you can use it, and then you split the cost. Like, I don't want to be submitting you invoices every single month so that then you decide when you're going to pay me. No, that's not how it is. Like, we'll have a credit card and you're going to pay, I pay my half, you pay your half. And if it sits on the credit card, that's not affecting your cash flow. So there's a lot of creative ways to settle things without you continuing to be the mothering parent, which is going to be very frustrating, and, or vice versa. It doesn't matter, but you don't want to be constantly on them to comply with the agreement. Create things that allow you to sit back and be like, okay, I got approval. Okay, we put the $1,000 on the credit card. I paid my half, you pay your half. You want to take time to pay it, you pay the interest or the fees or whatever.
Yeah, I absolutely love that idea, Melissa. I definitely grabbed it from you when I first heard it, and I recommend to my clients now, do a credit card. It's way easier than the receipts and tracking and logging and back and forth of child expenses. It's probably one of the best financial tips, I think, for co-parents. 100%.
Well, and we've seen it as kids get to be teenagers too. Like, if the biggest thing is, if somebody doesn't want to pay child support, then get them on the hook for all of the big items for a child. Like, the new iPad, the new iPhone, the insurance, the food, the whatever, and then have the card eventually be put a card in the kid's name. And, you keep it a low limit so that it's not crazy or anything like that. But then the kid is utilizing it, and it's really, then you can delineate what are the kid's expenses and allow the other parent to parent that kid, right? And say, hey, Johnny, you can't continue to eat out every day. Instead of you being the bad parent all the time, allow them to be the parent, if you will, and not just fun parent kind of situation. So
yeah, I hear you. So I'm going to go through a few little clauses just to give everyone that's watching. Maybe you've got a parenting plan, maybe you're busy setting one up, but here's a few things that I see a lot of people miss in the parenting plan. So with teenagers and the way the world is currently, so a social media clause. Many parents don't think about it. If your spouse doesn't bring it up, so let's say you come with a very detailed parenting plan, their parenting plan doesn't actually have any clauses about social media at all. Your parenting plan does. So at least it's starting a negotiation point. Maybe they don't agree with what you've set out, but there's a clause now that at least there's negotiation around this point. It bothers you. You want to have a clear understanding around social media. So if you bring into the plan, can the child be posted online? Can their location be shared? What about tagging their school? What about new partners posting them? What about monetizing content with your kids? This is the world that we're living in right now, and parenting plans back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago didn't need to include these things, but it's very important. And I'm saying this because I've seen this with quite a few of my clients over the last 2 years with social media and concerns. Is your co-parenting relationship long distance? So maybe right now you live 10 minutes apart, but life changes, jobs change, relationships change. So have you got a clause in your parenting plan, or considered putting a clause in your parenting plan that says, okay, who travels if one of the parents moves slightly further? Who does the traveling? How often is that traveling going to happen? How is contact going to be maintained should one parent move away? What happens with the school terms? What happens with passport and consent? So there's so many questions. So if you remember in the beginning, I mentioned 150 questions. That is what I have done through myself over the last few years, what I have learned people haven't even asked themselves yet, or isn't even considered in a parenting plan. Now, granted, as Melissa said, not everything is enforceable, but you at least want it on the table for discussion, and you at least want it on the table to consider. And maybe it's one of those things you both agree. Maybe both of you agree that social media, perfect. We don't post our kids. We don't share their school. We don't. And it might not be an argument point, but it's something that you have in paper, because when that new girlfriend comes and maybe she wants to share your kids online, you've got it in paper. Hey, we actually agreed 5 years ago on our parenting plan that we're not sharing our kids online. Another potential clause, now maybe you've heard of first right of refusal, maybe you haven't. This is if one parent cannot take care of the kids, you can set a threshold, whether it's over 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, or a whole day. The other parent then has first option to watch the kids. Now, this does sound good on paper, but I have unfortunately, and I was very pro first right of refusal. However, if you are with a toxic partner, it can be used to weaponize you. It can be used to control your time, monitor your life. It can become a problem. So the question shouldn't necessarily be, do you want first right of refusal? Because just a standard first right of refusal clause is not a good clause to have, because that can be used, and there's so many loopholes in that. You need a clear clause that says, okay, how do we define it so it's not abused? Is there a makeup time? So if the other parent gives their time up, do they get that time back, or do they lose that time? How often can they use it? What triggers a first right of refusal? Or do you want it in there at all? There are so many things that can be considered or need to be considered in your parenting plan based on your personal circumstances. And that is why this questionnaire, instead of giving you a template, it's prompting you to ask the right questions. So it's not to overwhelm you, but it's like I mentioned in the beginning, it's why I wished I was asked better questions, or someone prompted me to think about the unthinkable of when you're first going through divorce with kids. You don't want to be considering your ex-husband or your ex-wife introducing someone else to your kids. You don't want to be thinking about that, but that may be what you need to think about right now. I'll use a real example. I wasn't prepared personally for that, and there was no conversation. There was nothing in the parenting plan originally about new partners, and a new partner was introduced before we had that conversation because we didn't know to ask that. So your children's lives are constantly moving. There's 1,000 moving parts, and a good parenting plan is what's going to create that stability. And as Melissa mentioned earlier, and I've said this over and over, we can never control the other parent. So even with a good parenting plan, you cannot control the other parent. However, you can put a framework and structure in place to eliminate that conflict or minimize the conflict, and have a structure in place that when things go wrong, you've already discussed it and you guys have a plan moving forward. The goal is to reduce conflict. Otherwise, you might as well just stay divorced, right? Stay married. So as I'm wrapping up here towards the end, if anyone that's watching, I have developed the Untangled Parenting Plan system. There is basic for $149. Now, the whole system I can actually share with you here quickly. Let me give you a brief insight into what you can see here. One moment. Share screen. Let's see here. And so just to give you a quick idea here, once you purchase, how do I scroll? Oh, here I scroll. So the basic parenting plan system will give you a guidebook, and the guidebook is going to tell you what things to consider, your child cheat sheets for the different ages. Maybe you've got toddlers, maybe you've got teenagers or tweens. It covers all the questions, or not questions, but it kind of gives you the mindset of how to approach co-parenting. You've got the questionnaire that's going to prompt you everything that you need to kind of consider. And it's multiple choice, very easy, can be filled out in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on your case. It covers additional needs children with special needs. It covers long distance. It covers high conflict, parallel parenting, babies, toddlers, high school kids, social media. It's going to prompt you to ask all the questions. I have a clause library as well, which has about 80 pages of common clauses used globally for parenting plans. You can add them in, you can edit them, you can leave them out based on your circumstances, but you're not just going off of a basic template. And then because we're in the era of AI, we also have some AI prompts and instructions that you can use your questionnaire and the clause library. Paste that into AI with these prompts, and it will spit out a full parenting plan for you that you can then take to your mediator or your attorney and have them review it and start the negotiation. So this is your parenting plan proposal. It's the same as Melissa saying, getting a position statement, putting your position statement and your settlement offer together. This is a proposal. It's starting your negotiation. It's a starting point of how you want to move forward and what you want going and what you want, understanding what you need to go forward. I've added a few parenting plan templates and then also a meditation bonus. Now, if you go for the premium, you get quite a bit more. You've got the guidebook here. Hold up. I think I'm not sharing the right one again. Sorry, guys. Take. Share screen. Which one? Is it this one? There we go. So the premium parenting plan system, you'll get the guidebook, everything in basic. You get the questionnaire, you get the clause library, you'll get AI prompts and instructions. Here I've added a parallel parenting plan sample, so you can see what a parallel parenting plan will look like. I've added a high conflict parenting plan sample and just a general parenting plan sample. So you can even take just those if you're in premium and edit them according to you, looking at the library, the clause library. I've also added, for your premium, you get a 60-minute session with me to review any of those blind spots or any areas of questions that you may have. So this is exactly what I was hoping for. There's a lot more meditations. Melissa and I did a few videos here on parenting plan power moves, negotiating settlement offers, and then I've got a few more meditations. So meditation for forgiveness and letting go, or body scan for anxiety, moving anger through your body. For anyone that's new, I am also a meditation teacher, had to become one through my divorce. But that's just to give you guys an idea of a system that I've developed, and it's been shaped through the Divorce Allies over the last few years as well, and working one-on-one with clients, developing a lot of parenting plans and finding those loopholes that are just missing. Because a good parenting plan can really save you a lot of conflict going forward. It can really help you. And it doesn't need to cost $3,000 to $5,000 for your attorney to do it. Because when you are sitting with your attorney, they're going to be doing it with you. It's billable hours, every email, every question that you have. And that can rank up quite expensive. So, yeah.
Well,
Any questions that we have?
Yeah, and I think if we have questions, we're going to keep on answering them. Where this comes into play and where it becomes really important is that, this is going to be an area that the more time you spend on getting the parenting plan that you feel comfortable with, right? And it's a piece of the puzzle for the negotiation of a full financial settlement offer. Like if you want to start with going into mediation or talking to your spouse about, well, what do you think we should do? Well, what do I think we should do? That's going to just create a lot of frustration for you. It's going to take a lot of time answering these questions. At the end of the day, if you are the primary caregiver, you will know what is important and what is not important. And it's going to be the most advantageous for you to come up with a draft of the full parenting plan, before you even start to ask your spouse any questions, before you start to answer any questions to your lawyer, because the old kind of adage is it's a lot easier for people to take a big plan and cut it down and edit it than to create it from out of nothing. And so if you just, a lot of times people will go into mediation and say, okay, the mediator's like, well, what do you want in the parenting plan? What's important to you? All of that does not need to be done in a democracy. Like, you really need to create what would be your ideal parenting plan, put as much in it that is as restrictive as possible or as, crazy as possible. It's your best offer of a plan that addresses, like, if you have kids that have hard transition, difficulty transitioning, if they have ADHD, if they have other disabilities or issues to deal with, if they have food allergies, if they have clothing issues, like all of these things, medication, be very clear in the parenting plan, because in some ways it's a guide to the other parent about the things that are important and relevant. The more you put everything in it, they're not going to figure out the 3 to 5 things that are the most important things for you, because again, a toxic spouse is going to be like, oh, let me take out these things because I can see, like, they're very important if you're just talking about them. So this is part of presenting a full offer, would be a full parenting plan. Let them edit it down. What if they just take a look at it and they don't spend a lot of time? What if they don't pay their attorney to spend a lot of time reviewing it and you get everything that you want, or they cut out a few clauses? Okay, that's a lot better. You probably snuck a bunch of stuff in that a normal parenting plan would never cover, right? And so I think that's where this becomes really important piece of it. If you are concerned, if you want to prevent discussions in the future of arguing over issues that, and you do have to think far in advance, like, oh, well, my kid's 3. Why do I need to worry about who's going to buy the car? Because right now you have an opportunity that you have to solve all the problems for this to be over. When you're done in 12 years and you're down the pipeline and they're like, well, I don't want to pay for a car. Or I'm going to pick the car, I'm going to pick the school they go to. You didn't cover those. And so now you're forced to kind of come back and try to police an agreement that was not as comprehensive. So you have a much better chance to push forward a very comprehensive plan right now, because guess what? They don't care, right? They're just checking the box and they'll be like, oh, looks good. Who cares? Great. Have it be robust as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I love that, because if they point out 3 things on yours they don't like, you got away with all the other 80 that you added in. Whereas if you didn't even put those 80 in and you started with their template, you're going to, down the line, you're going to struggle. You may not want to think, I know I hate asking my clients this question. I'm like, is there a will in place? What's happening? Now that you're divorced, what happens to your kids? So just a silly example for me, my kid's dad lives in Florida. So my old will, he would have immediately gotten the kids, but I had to go and edit it and add it into the parenting plan that until he can get here, my mother, if something were to happen to me immediately, my mother takes them immediately. So if you guys don't live in the same state and he cannot get to the kids within 30 minutes if something happens to you, what is the interim? Are your kids beneficiaries of their life insurance? Do you have that on? Do you want, if there isn't a will, do you want to put in the parenting plan that both parents need to state that the other parent gets the kids?
Yeah. And this is where I think it comes into some mediation strategies. And again, it could be mediation or it could just be making an offer. Like, if you're going into mediation and the parenting plan and the financial offer are the 2 biggest issues, you're going to want to send this a week in advance, right? 10 days in advance, because you want them to take the time to read it. You want them to take the time to read it with their attorney. You want them to come and edit it or make some changes with it. And the biggest thing that I would say, and we've talked about this a lot, even in social, is stop making assumptions that they're not going to agree to something. Okay. And this is what I think lawyers have a problem with. Be like, oh, no one's going to agree to that. Oh, that's too restrictive. Like, you have to get that out. Like, let them choose the pieces that they don't want to agree with. But you need to put everything in the kitchen sink in your best offer, not only your financial best offer, but your parenting plan best offer. And yes, that means you have to put the time in. Do not expect that they're going to provide some parenting plan when they're not the primary caregiver. Like, you're waiting for something. And again, we talk a lot about anchoring the deal. You're going to allow them to anchor some basic plan, and then they're going to want you to edit that plan, as opposed to you get ahead of the game and say, hey, guess what? I've already put together a parenting plan. I sent it to you in advance of the mediation. Now they don't have any reason. Now, a toxic person is still potentially not going to look at it, but you can say to the mediator, like, we sent this 10 days in advance. They should have ample opportunity. Go ask them what they have issues with in the parenting plan. And then you are really in mediation, just kind of negotiating 5 different areas, and everybody's already read it, because it could have taken them hours. Because what happens is you send it to the lawyer then meets with their client. Hey, do you have any issues with this? The lawyer's going to say, well, legally, they can't get this, right? Like, legally, the judge may not give them this clause in the parenting plan. That's okay. Now they are meeting together. They're talking about it. By the time you get into mediation, we're not wasting an hour of them doing what they could have done outside of mediation. Then they're coming with their primary issues, and then you are asking questions. And the questions are going to be, in any negotiation, do not make assumptions about what they will agree to. I would much rather ask the questions and get them to commit to what they would or would not do. In this situation, we just want to give them a full plan. Same with the financials. Get a full plan, and then allow them to tell you what their issues are. And you only then deal with those issues. You don't bring up like, oh, are you going to be okay with how we drop off? Well, now they're going to go look and be like, well, what's the issue with the drop off, right? Allow them to create their issues. Do not make assumptions. And there's probably going to be areas that you would give on. Okay, that's part of the negotiation. If there's a clause that's too restrictive, you probably knew that going into it. Your lawyer probably told you, you know what, you're probably not going to get that. Okay, well, then you know that you might have to give that up. What is plan B? What is, if that restrictive clause gets pulled, what is the secondary clause? And that's what you're asking your attorney. Okay, well, if that one's too restrictive, what is the clause that you think is going to withstand the scrutiny of the other side? That is your counter offer that's sitting in the background. That is legally what your attorney can bring to the table when you're kind of having this initial discussion, because you're going to create this plan and have to review it with your own attorney as well. So that means weeks in advance. This isn't, and just to be honest, like, Cristin went through it very quickly, and we appreciate that. But like, this could take you a month or two to create a settlement offer that includes a high conflict parenting plan. Okay. So this is not a weekend. This is not done overnight. This is cover all your bases. This is the only time that you're going to have everybody coming to the table, and you cannot agree to something over here that's important to them to try to get them to agree to something important in the settlement offer or the parenting plan.
Yeah, and a wonderful example of that is I had clients where the mom knew how much Christmas Eve meant to the dad. She put her parenting plan proposal where she was just alternating, but in the back of her mind, she wanted, I think it was spring break or something that she wanted. So she'd put in alternating, but in the back of her mind, knowing that she was willing to give Christmas Eve up as a negotiation for spring break. So
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact details, but it's exactly what you're saying there. It was, she still put it in there, knowing that it meant a lot to him, and she put other things that she wanted and used that as leverage. Say, okay, I'll change what I have in the parenting plan, and you can have the Christmas Eves as long as I can have the Christmas Day, or vice versa. And she used that as leverage. So if you do know what the other parent wants, you can use that as leverage, and putting everything in the parenting plan, then you can kind of play things off of each other.
Now, we've had situations, and I'll give you a little bit slightly different example, and I think a lawyer on social talks about this and gave this example as well. So, like we had a client that really wanted Memorial Day, right? And like it was just a deal breaker. And so we put into the parenting plan, you know, certain holidays, but we left, like, who cares about Memorial Day and Labor Day, right? So instead, and she wanted Memorial Day, whatever I just said, Memorial Day, right? So we went in, and he gives this an even better example. So we went in and said, it's a non-negotiable, we need Labor Day. And they and this toxic person was like, you're not getting Labor Day. Hell no, you can have Memorial Day. And so we actually, you know, like sometimes, and again, you have to know enough about the situation to be able to pull those bluffs and like play those games. But and sometimes that is something that is spoken in the negotiations as opposed to written. You know, so this is where strategy becomes very important. And again, we are in rooms. A caucus style mediation means that you're in the room with your people, and I'm in the room, and the other person is in the room with their people. And the other thing that we've seen lately is that mediators don't necessarily want to allow you to have other people in the room. Now, you have to understand that mediators are typically lawyers or former judges who are lawyers. And this kind of situation happens because they're trying to control the room. So if you need somebody else, and they are really trying to prevent you from bringing your mother, your sister, your brother, who is going to emotionally charge you or tell you, don't take that offer, like that's crazy. You should be able to have somebody strategic in the room that understands the financials. And I'm like, yes, of course, I'm the financial person. And yes, of course, I would say you have to have a financial person in the room. But if you have a legal mediator and a legal professional on your team, who is giving you financial advice when you're going up against a financially savvy person, or you're going up against somebody who is going to manipulate you with numbers? Because if I tell you right now with all confidence that this necklace is worth $1,000, who are you to tell me that it's different, right? Who are you to tell me, well, that looks like it's like a Kendra Scott necklace that I could probably get for about $50 online? Who are you to represent that unless you go down that path of understanding it? And so if your mediator will not allow you to have a financial advisor, a strategist in the room, if the parenting plan is the biggest issue, could you have a parenting plan coordinator as well? Like you have to advocate for yourself or switch the mediator. Now, if you cannot switch the mediator, then you're going in for that one mediation to gather data. You are not going in to necessarily settle it. You are going to ask at the end of mediation to have 7 days to review that offer so that you can talk to your strategist, so that you can talk to your parenting plan coordinator. Or low key, I'm typically on speakerphone and nobody knows about it. So I'm actually listening to everything that's happening, because most mediations are taking place via Zoom. And then I'm listening and I'm texting my client what to say in the mediation. So do not get it confused. Like, this is your divorce, your settlement strategy, your mediation. And even if you have a court-appointed mediator that tells you you can't have anybody in the room, there's ways around it. You have to be willing to break a social norm because there are no rules in mediation. There are not hypothetical rules. There are only the rules that the mediator creates that they then push off to you. And you think, oh, well, nobody can be in the room. No, that's just that mediator being a lawyer and trying to control a room, which means it's a red flag. I think we have some comments.
Do you want me to get them,
Anna,
Cristin?
do you want to go?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So I just want to get it on record. We had a question up here that was already addressed, but I just want to make sure that it's on here. So someone said 20 years ago with my previous marriage, he was so difficult to deal with. It seemed any rules or guidelines he would just laugh at. I ended up with full custody over his refusal for years to co-parent. What saved me is my documentation. Document everything, show their patterns. Yes.
Now, I want to take this one step further. It's not just document, it is documented in email. So if they text you, they call you, they make a snide remark at drop up or pick up, which you shouldn't be, like, drop them off at school and somebody else picks them up at school. You should never be even having to deal with them unless your kids are in sports. And that's where you will probably have the conflict. Like, they're going to figure out a way. Here's Johnny's backpack, and by the way, you're a blah, 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 blah. Respond to everything in email so that you are creating and documenting the patterns. You're not looking for them to respond back in email. You're like, hey, thanks for today. I don't appreciate how you talk to me. And maybe we could go back to blah, 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 blah. Respond to it, not in text. In email, wait 24 hours before you respond or sleep on it and send it in the next day. Confirm what happened. You can describe what happened, because if you get it wrong and they will respond and say, that's not what happened, that's fine, but document it absolutely in order to show it, because you might have in the agreement, you might say, okay, we would have to go with a co-parenting coordinator. There's now these co-parenting coordinators that are being it's on the fence about whether each state likes this or not, but they are actually also lawyers, typically, that are people that you can use in your county that are reputable. I would seek out more of a therapist or somebody more in the mental health space, because a lot of these are manipulations of mental health, not necessarily legal issues, but that's something that's happening around the country.
I agree with that on the parenting coordinator, rather finding someone with a mental health or social services background and understands conflict and trauma and high conflict. On the document everything note as well, I am really a big fan of Our Family Wizard, because I've just witnessed how in the really high conflict cases that I've dealt with, where there's restraining orders and things, and it's only Our Family Wizard communication, it logs times that it's read, it logs when it's opened, the response, and it'll lay it out perfectly, and it's all court admissible. So if you are in a really high conflict and toxic situation, I would even steer away from emails. This specific case, her emails were hacked, so it wasn't safe. Security footage of the incidences were deleted because the Wi-Fi was hacked, security systems were hacked. So Our Family Wizard is an amazing platform. There are others as well, but I personally recommend my clients to use that one because it documents timestamps, shows the flow very, very clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then use ChatGPT for whatever response or post that you're going to post into Our Family Wizard to kind of take the emotion out, deal with one issue at a time, not compound things, wait for their response, and then, deal within that. But it's a very low cost thing to put into play when you're negotiating at the very beginning. If you think that there's going to be an issue, it's also a better way when a parent wants to control the kid's iPhone or things like that. You have a clear communication of, various options, because again, if they take the iPhone away as a punishment and now you don't have communication with your child because the other parent punished them in some capacity, I think that you have to figure out if that's going to be a rational way to punish them when it also affects your communication. So it's a low key way that they'll try to manipulate the system.
Yeah.
So then she kind of followed up and said, what about if they habitually don't pay it and they ruin your credit? And then Melissa answered, have the credit card be on their social security number and you or the kids are just added users. And then she followed up, I learned as added users, it also affects our credit. I learned that the hard way. Any follow-up on that?
Well, I mean, these are types of situations that everybody's going to have an opinion. So it either affects my credit or it doesn't affect my credit. That is all going to be hyper dependent upon the credit card and whether you have actually issued and became an authorized user, or if you're just there's a bunch of nuances to it. I think this is just Melissa's opinion, not the world's opinion. Everybody gets a little bit too hyped up about credit. Like at the end of the day, if you want to ask them for money every month, go ahead. Like there are other platforms, just like Our Family Wizard, that you can submit the expenses and, then each of you pay. They can get a credit card for just the kid, and the kid is utilizing the credit card when they're with mom or something like that. And it's just between the kid and the dad. You got to figure out what is going to be comfortable for you, but manipulation after divorce for the money is going to be still a big factor. So, figure out what makes sense to you. Or what I've seen is you can do prepaid credit cards where each of you are going to put, $200 into it each month, and then that's utilized. So it's actually like almost like a prepaid card as opposed to actually like pulling in as credit, because some people may not even be able to get a credit card kind of situation. So again, there's a million different ways to go about it. We're just saying don't leave it to just be that you are the mom of this. Like you're probably getting divorced because you have been momming your spouse. Okay. So how do you get out of having to be the one that's constantly giving receipts for all of this crap? What I would say is, and again, I would say, hey kid, you're going to dad's, tell him you need a coat. Tell him you need some shoes. Tell him you need the books. Tell him you need an iPhone. Like the kid is going to get everything they want if they go in and ask for it. And if they're with that parent, like make them go to the store. Like you got to let a go of some control over, well, I want them to get a certain coat. Who cares? Who cares? They're probably going to need 2 of everything anyway, because the kid leaves the damn coat at the school, at the dad's, at the this, at the that. So allow them to purchase some of those things. Allow them to be the parent that they need to start showing up as.
I have so on that note as well, if they're not going to pay the credit card, they're not going to pay the child support or the maintenance, or maybe you have it structured. Sometimes we structure it where they pay the school fees directly. They may pay the medical insurance directly. So the big chunky expenses they pay directly. If you have a spouse that's or a co-parent that's not going to pay just because of control and manipulation, regardless of whether it's a credit card or reimbursement or something, it's all going to affect you. Hence, we have Anna to get our mamas, our people getting divorced or ladies getting divorced that were stay-at-home moms, to get yourself into that financial position where regardless of what happens with that co-parent, if they pay, they don't pay, you are able to provide for your kids.
Yeah, and then here we go with the good kind of situation. So one of our members said, I'm a homemaker and a primary caregiver of our minor child that wants to go to a boarding school in September. I cover for this child's all expenses from the financial support I receive from a soon-to-be ex that lives in another country with another woman. I don't have any court order in place yet for any kind of support from the ex. I don't want to deny my child of her wish to go to a boarding school. How to make sure that her expenses in boarding school are covered by my spouse and that I don't lose adequate support before we divide our assets. The support is not adequate now. I expect it to be lower when the child goes to a boarding school. He has not responded to my lawyer's request to explain or put in place any provisions for our children and I.
Melissa, do you know? I don't know necessarily about the legalities. I know in South Africa it's called a Rule 43. So it is emergency interim support until actual child support is calculated. I think with one of my cases in North Carolina, I can't remember what it was called, but maybe every state has a different one. Maybe you do know, but there is emergency interim support. So you may need to ask your attorney to file for that, for interim support, until the divorce settlement and the child support and maintenance is all actually calculated and finalized in agreement. But the law, legally, there is a way to get emergency support. Maybe that's your option here.
Well, and again, these are all legal. Anytime you're going to talk about child support or alimony, these are legal constructs that look like money. So we're not giving any legal advice in any capacity. This particular person is actually located out of the US as well. And so this is strategically what I think that, like for what she's dealing with right now, you're going to have to try to negotiate an agreement that somebody pays those expenses. For the most part, in most counties in the US, there is not going to be an obligation, like the court is not going to want to provide an obligation to either parent to support anything that's paid school. So paid boarding school, paid private school, paid college, right? So if there are like, and especially if you're in a house that, I mean, I could see a judge saying, move to a public school that you can afford or that is free, and move to a house that you can afford, right? So you're not going to get a lot of support in that capacity. So dealing with what she's dealing with right now, if we talk about like she's already in it, we can't go back and change some things, but I'm going to talk about what we could do different. She needs to start to negotiate and figure out what that person wants in order to get what she wants. And that is the exchange of leverage. And so like we have a situation right now of a woman in Hawaii, and the spouse wants the house. And so she's willing to vacate the house if they can agree to what the support payments would be, what the, pay the expenses to relocate, she can secure a new place and residence. But you have to figure out what is the leverage that they want and how do you negotiate it. And the kids also have to have some, because we have the same issue in California with a client, and they were negotiating, and the boarding school cost $50,000 for 2 kids per year. And the spouse was just like, I can't afford that. Well, the kids have to start to also be, enunciating their desires. Like, are they having a hard time being bullied in school? Are there reasons, like they have some difficulties and they need some special education? All of those things come into play and make a difference, but you're going to have to negotiate that in some capacity. What Cristin is talking about is called temporary orders, or PDL, which is pendente lite in the US. And so this is typically what when you go to file for divorce, when we tell you to get prepped, you need to have your tax returns and know what income each of you is having. You need to have some of your financials. You need to have put that together in a position statement and at least a income and expenses before you even go into the lawyer. You need to tell them when you go in, and even when you go shopping, if you go to Walmart or Target and you buy things, buy a gift card, okay? Not just getting cash, because in order to pay some of these people, Now you got to go put cash in a separate account. Now you've opened a separate account. Now you got to disclose a separate account. Like, all of this thing is crazy. Get a $500 gift card, get a $300 gift card, build it into ramping up your expenses in that capacity. They're not going to know what you spent, $500 at Target and $200 was on a gift card. Stack the gift cards so that when you go into a consult, you can book that consult online with the lawyer. You can use a gift card to pay for it. It doesn't hit a credit card. It doesn't hit a bank account. It doesn't hit anything. And you go in and talk to that lawyer and you say, listen, the biggest issue is this person has never allowed me access to our joint account and never allowed me to even see where they are. When I file for divorce, it is going to hit the fan. Okay. This is going to go bananas. How do I get temporary support? That's what needs to be in play. That's what didn't go into play with this client. That's what doesn't go into play in a lot of clients. In Washington, it goes into play within weeks. In Missouri, it goes into play in months, but it is a hearing and you have to first get discovery. And oh my gosh, it's going to take. So you really have to understand that every state is different, but that is what you have to enunciate, or you have to plan for months and stack some money and set it aside and have that discussion. We also see this happen in when you first start talking to them and saying, hey, I might want to get divorced. And they're like, no, let's stay together. Great. We're going to establish a post-nup. And the post-nup is going to say, you're going to transfer $50,000 into a separate account in my name so that if this happens again, I already have the fund to go and get, like, you have to rebalance the control and the money, or you're going to have to negotiate. And right now, this client is not at the peak of a negotiation power play. She is at the bottom of it. So she wants these things for her kids. She wants them in addition to support payments. And the court may be outside of its capability to enforce boarding school, right? Because what's the spouse going to say? I'm broke. I don't have this money to pay for it. And the court's going to be like, do your kids real? And again, you're talking to a judge who's making 100, 150,000, 200,000 a year, who is going to be like, your kids don't need boarding school. That's right. Like, they're not going to have the sympathy that you have to understand. So, realistically, do the kids want this? Are the kids enunciating that to the father? Are you figuring out how he can pay that directly so that you are not involved in it? Or you might also be paying for some of it, and you would want to try to get maybe a 20-80 split so that you're contributing some things and they're contributing the lion's share. But it is a very complicated situation. And we have it happening across the board. It's even harder when they're already in the school, right? Because now you want to say, okay, who's going to continue? They're going to fight for it's a 50-50 split. At a minimum, try to get it so that it's corresponding to your percentage of income. So if they're making $500,000 and you're making 50,000, have it correspond in a ratio like that, so that, yes, you're contributing, or you buy books, or you get the food, there's something in the tuition, because like one of my kids' school, they still had to pay for food, and that was still like a couple $100 a month, right? So try to negotiate some of this, but you got to figure out what they want so that you can start to trade it. And or get it through the court, like go through the temporary orders and try to keep everything in play. So if everything stays in play and they still pay the mortgage, they still pay the kids' school, they still pay the utilities, you're not going to have money to pay other stuff. That's why you're going to need those gift cards set aside so that you have money to get gas, to get food, to get basic things that you're going to need. And then you may have to consider a part-time job. Why? Because a lot of states are going to put a salary on you, even as a stay-at-home mom. So they're going to say you could earn $20,000 to $25,000 to $30,000. really 25 to 35,000 is where I see it in most situations, which is like 30 hours a week, part-time, 9 to 3 when the kids are in school, right? The judge is going to already put on temporary orders that you could at least make that amount of money, and you don't make it. So it's not going to harm you to get a small part-time job while the kids are in school, or at least start looking for one. If you get rejected, even better. You're going into the court and you're like, listen, I applied 10 times. I got rejected. It's a hard, like, it really is a hard situation out there in the 9 to 5 world, for stay-at-home moms that don't have any educational background, or it's, like 10 years old, 15 years old. Like the 9 to 5, the side hustle market right now is a lot easier to get into than the real market. Maybe that's a good segue, Anna, if you want to talk about anything like that.
Well, yes, but Cristin, do you want to kind of wrap up before I go into that?
Yeah, I don't know if I showed the last slide. I can't remember, but I do want to just mention, if anyone wants to, I have given any of our Divorce Allies members an extra 10% discount code. I've added the link, live10. Please feel free to email me if you even just have any questions. Yeah. That's me done, Anna. I'd love to hear what you have to say there.
Well, and I think that's a great example too of like what Cristin, this, Gracefully Untangled at one point was probably a side hustle and now has moved into not just side, but primary hustle, right? And so everything that she has created is an example of what you can do in the future. Cristin went through a divorce. She is a single mother raising 2 boys. She has done all of this by herself with, of course, help and assistance from like minimal, but it's minimal, right? Like Cristin has connected her interests, her background, her experience, everything, and then is now creating it into a service offering that's not just coaching one-on-one, but also a product like this that you could make something similar. So I think that that's just, it's really difficult, I'm sure, for where a lot of you are at right now to even get in that headspace of something to create to sell, because doing this, us 3 on the screen, it's a lot of work every day. We're either recording content for it, ideating, strategizing about it. But I love what you're saying, because it is right. My friends that are unemployed that love corporate, it is a bad market out there and
Yeah.
they are terrified. They are so scared they cannot find another job. And these are people that have been working for like, what is it? Well, whatever, like these big corporations, they get laid off. And so they have really good companies on their CV and they cannot get hired. And so I try to push them to start a side hustle and they're like, well, but listen,
Yeah.
2 different.
Well, we had a client that went through mediation 2 weeks ago and was working to try to get a 9 to 5 because, quite frankly, the settlement was just not going to be enough, right? The reality was, when you split everything up, it's just not going to be enough. Not enough retirement, not enough cash currently, not enough. Now, she had a window of probably like 5 to 6 months where, she could have enough to support, and her bills were very low. Like, I'm talking like $3,000 a month because things were paid off and she was just going to try to get through it. She, within 7 days, had done like an online QuickBooks training, an online how to create an ebook, because she was an educator and she knows how to educate kids about money and counting and math and things like that. She went online and created this like ebook that was educational and interactive. And then she went on Stan Store, took a little primer on Stan Store, does not have a website yet, right? Has a Stan Store that is offering this, is looking at, how to maybe multitask when she figures out QuickBooks and be like a QuickBooks person, or offer up her editing because she was a copywriter as well. And so it's really like these multiple things but within the time of 7 days from when she was kind of done with mediation, and we were still kind of finishing the documents, she had done all of this work. And she was like, you know what? And she was really trying to find a 9 to 5, like teaching English as a second language, like things like this. And she realized it was so hard out there to just get even basic jobs that were going to pay like $17 an hour, right? Whereas if one person downloads her book, it's $22 to download the book, and it could just be happening over time. So she was at the point of, okay, now how do I go on to social media and talk about the book, right? So you still have to create all of these things so that you can have some way that people can buy from you, and you can plan a lot of that in the dark. Then when you get divorced, it's like, okay, now you go into social and create a new social, create a new Instagram or TikTok that's not your primary one if you want to. Like, start fresh, whatever you want to do. But it is very doable, and to plan some of it while you're getting divorced. And so she drank the Kool-Aid, and all she had seen was the last session where we were talking about different things, or a couple sessions ago, when we were talking about it. And she was like, okay, let's see how I could do this. Stan Store is $29. It's basically a website that you don't even need a website for right now if you just have a couple products. I think she also had a friend that was in the education space and put that that download on their website, right? Like, maybe you don't have to, because what Cristin did was, anywhere she got to a roadblock, she would hire somebody on Upwork or Fiverr, or like, make me a logo, help me with my website, give me, like, aren't you in WordPress? Like, you're in a whole different, yeah. So
I'm in Wix, and I've learned myself. And for anyone watching, you may not want to hear this, but you can't rely on your ex-spouse, unfortunately, whether it's court ordered, and maybe you do need to start a side hustle and have another. Like, I manage Airbnbs, I teach meditation, I do modeling work, I run my business. I have multiple streams of income so that I provide for my kids, because I unfortunately don't have a reliable co-parent, even though it's court-ordered finances. So I am doing everything. And as mothers, we do that. So if that is you, don't narrow yourself down to thinking the only way to make money is a 9 to 5. Approach some Airbnbs in the area wherever you live. If you live in like a tourist city or something, say, hey, I'll go and I'll get a cleaner, I'll arrange the management, I'll do the bookings. It's very simple. So there's so many ways to make money from home. Even if you have been a stay-at-home mother for the last 15 or 20 years, you have an abundance of education or knowledge. Maybe you bake cakes. I have some weird cake baking past life skills as well. I'm really good at baking cakes. But maybe you bake cakes, maybe you crochet, maybe you create a recipe book, or you're good at homeschooling your kids, or organization, or as a stay-at-home mom, you've got an abundance of knowledge. Don't think just because it's not corporate, you've got something that you can share with someone. And that's what we want you to be able to do, is make your own money while still being able to be a mom. If you've been stay at home and you need to be done by when the kids are finished at school, then you can still do that and you work around them. There's plenty ways to skin a cat. I hate that saying, but yeah, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
And everyone on screen here, me, Melissa, Cristin, we have made something. We have trialed and errored it multiple times. We know the process. I also highly recommend Upwork. That is something where I'm even paying people to do things that I don't want to do. Don't take away the things that you're really good at. Go hire someone for $10, $15, $20 an hour to do the tasks you don't want to do. And then that you are the leader of the content, the strategy, the whatever. You don't have to do it all yourself. You can easily find people that can do something. But anyway,
this isn't even a stopgap. Like, you have to understand that the creatives are the next economy. Like the old big company paradigm where they charge a bunch of money and then pay you little to do it. People are sick of that. People are
Mhm.
tired of it. It never really fulfilled people as well. So as we move into this new economy, bone up on AI, like figure out AI, figure out bookkeeping, figure out some of these tasks that people are going to outsource. Now, why would a big company want to work with you? Because they don't want to pay insurance. They don't want to pay benefits. They want subcontractors. Like figure out in your niche how you can go more niche and then find a handful of people that are willing to pay for that particular service.
Yeah.
And, like I do valuations, I do pensions, and those were always big money things. Now I'm doing 90-minute strategy sessions and like settlement strategy and coming in when people are like 2-3 weeks out from mediation. They're like, oh my God, I'm screwed. No, you're not. We got you. And it's cheaper for them. It's better for them. They get exactly what they want. You couldn't have told me years ago that this would be an option, but people are finding, because that's very niche, right? Nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is planning. But if you know your industry well enough and hey, nobody's planning for mediation. If I put myself out as a mediation consultant, I wonder if people pay 90-minute sessions for $500, which is way cheaper than a $5,000 retainer, and they get it right when they need it, right? And we prep them and, oh, wait, you can be at my mediation? Oh, yeah. Well, that is a very niche thing. Like not everybody can go and do that. But do I need millions of people doing it? Not necessarily. Do I need a handful of people? Like, do I need to book 2 a day to make $1,000 a day to make $20,000 a month? Right? And yes, you're going to go really in and do your best work in those hours, but those 2 or 3 hours. So even with some prep time, that's not a full day, right? And so again, whatever it is that you can go really niche, like again, organizing people's lives or their houses, that is like you can do that during the day. Of course they want you to do it during the day because they want everybody out of the house. Like, and then your kids are out. Like, where can you have something that fits in so that you are working it into your life, but it's not this, oh, I'm a general cleaner, organizer, everything. No, I organize closets, or I like, how do you niche down so that it's very specific? And then what you go online and talk about is tips. Like, here's organizational tips. Here's where you can go. Here, I went to the organization store and here's some sale things. Here, I'm going to buy these. It was $20. I go in. Now you show a clip of you putting it into your own closet, you organizing things, labeling it for the kids because they can throw, like we used to do baskets in the little baskets in their closets because like throw your sock, but you're not going to organize it anyway. Throw the socks in one, throw the underwear in another, throw the t-shirts in another, throw the shorts in another. Like, how do you create that people are like, oh, that's a great idea. You know what? I'd rather just call them and have them do it. Perfect. You don't need everyone. You need just enough to get you through, and then you will fine tune. Okay, now do you have automated emails? Do you have automated, scheduling? Do you have automated billing? Things like that. You just add it one by one as the customers show up. And then you're like, oh, I need a little bit more. Okay, great. I got the money coming in. Let's do a little bit more. And the customer will show you what they need. Like maybe there's a checklist. Like, hey, here's a checklist before we go in. Hey, here's how you can be more prepared. Things like that. So it's definitely everything we do on the Divorce Vault is a sample. The Divorce Allies is the community. You might want to pull together a community and have people pay $10 a month, right? Something cheap. Oh, we're only charging $22 a month. Yeah. Get some people and you facilitate every weekend a mom's group. You do a walking group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, not everybody's in the same town. Yeah, I know. We're going to get on our Zoom on our phone and we're going to walk together and we're going to chit chat, right? Like it can be easier because you're facilitating what would you have wanted in the same situation. Create it. What would you have wanted to make something efficient in a niche area? Create it. And it's really way more simple than you could have imagined. every day it gets more simple because of AI as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The options are limitless, so just start. And we like to kind of wrap up these sessions with a little bit of an activity or a reflection. And since it's February and everything's going to be either Valentine's Day or Galentine's Day, I figured we could write a little love letter to ourselves. So, again, this will be in the roll up at the end of the week. You can, I don't know if you journal, you can journal this. If you want to write it down, go for it, however you want. But it just kind of, I'll read it to you. Feel free to do as you wish. But so this is to yourself, right? Self-love, everything to yourself. Dear your own name, I just wanted to remind you, you don't need to earn love. You are love. I see how hard you've been trying to XYZ. And even when things feel unclear, I want you to know you're doing better than you think. I'm so proud of the way you XYZ, even when no one sees it. I know you sometimes forget your worth when XYZ, but please remember your value doesn't disappear when you feel uncertain or tired. You are allowed to XYZ. You're not too much. You're not behind. You are not broken. You are soft, strong, and becoming. Keep choosing yourself, even on the quiet days. With all my love, and you can either put your name or your future self, because we're all about our future self this month and every month going forward. So I know I read in one of the comments here that someone has money anxiety. That I don't, it's all the time, I think. And even when you start earning a lot, there's still somehow anxiety. I recommend absolutely reading the book, You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. She has really great mindset tweaks around money. And I started reading it about a year ago, and I try to implement all of her activities in there too. And she even has like write letters to money, write letters to your relationship with money, write letters to your money trauma. All of these things are just deeply rooted, and it's easy to kind of unravel them and you start seeing things a little bit clearly. So that is my 2 cents. We can end this now. If anyone else has anything, please go ahead.
No, I think that was good. I think that at the end of the day, money trauma is just something that you work on, and it's methodical. And if you'll go back to when we talked about abundance, abundance is in a lot of different places, and abundance is linked to gratitude. And so at the end of the day, typically you will have what you need. And then the things that you desire, you will call in some capacity. So that's going to be great. Next week, we'll go back to talking to about the finances, and we're going to be heavily into the position statement, how we can utilize the position statement for a lot of different things, how it leads into the settlement offer. We are potentially going to work on maybe a mock trial kind of situation, but typically it's going to be Emily and I are going to be in the second money, the money issue. And so we'll be talking about some mediation strategies and money strategies. So look forward to that, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.